What a conclusion to the Eastern Conference playoff race we had last night. Justin Pooni, Steven Psihogios of NorthStar Bets. Stevie, I was just telling you off air that I was at the Blue Jays game last night against the Yankees. Was not paying attention to that at all. Was solely focused on my phone on the playoff races. Your Bruins lose to the Senators. Excuse me. They face off against the Leafs, which could be a good case for them. The Capitals score an empty net goal because Torch decides to pull his goalie early to win in regulation. Simultaneously in Montreal, the Red Wings complete a crazy comeback, all for nothing because they were eliminated by the time the shootout hit. So we're here to break that all down, talk some Leaf Bruins, some best bets. But Stevie, my first question to you is, it's a little conversation I was having last night at the Jays game as well. Do you think this is the best NHL regular season of all time that we've seen?
It's been excellent.
Mhm.
Honestly, the race in the East has been really fun to watch. I know a lot of people like to poo-poo the way the playoff format is now, but you tell me, you watched last night, you're watching Boston play
Mhm.
Ottawa simultaneously with Toronto, Florida, knowing the implications that were at stake. And you tell me, was that not fun to watch? I really enjoyed it. It was fun channel surfing back and forth between those two games early on, and then looking at the Washington game, looking at the Detroit game, seeing
Yeah.
what was happening over there. I really enjoyed it. So I will say, for as much slack as the current playoff format gets, it created a memorable night. And I'm not going to say it was the best regular season ever. As a Bruins fan, winning pretty much every
Mhm.
game the last year was a lot of fun. But it was a great way to end the regular season. I'm just happy. I'm just happy I don't have to play the Tampa Bay Lightning in the round one, or my Boston Bruins rather, don't have to play the
Yes,
Tampa Bay Lightning in round one.
absolutely. When it comes to this NHL regular season, the reason why I said, "Is this the best of all time?" Uh, I was a big for the last, like, couple years now, it coincides with the Canucks not being good, but for the last couple of years or the last 5, 6 years, the NBA regular season has taken more of my interest, more so than hockey. But I think over time, you've seen the NBA players care less and less about the regular season load management. It's more about off the court than on the court. And this year, really diving back into the NHL. You had the amazing playoff races in the Eastern Conference. We had that amazing race for the Art Ross. We had superstars that play every night. Matthews 70 goal chase. McDavid hitting 100 assists. The race in the Western Conference, three Canadian teams being three of the best teams in the West. The Leafs, of course, and their ups and downs this season. The storylines were abundant. The playoff race was abundant. The superstars have shown up this year. Kucherov, McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews, Hughes, Yossi, Makar, all these guys having great seasons. Hellebuck. The NHL right now is in such a good position, and the playoff matches determine that as well. Look, do I think the Rangers are going to smack over the Washington Capitals? Yes. But you have Alex Ovechkin playing the President's Trophy winners who just so happen to be in the biggest media market. You have the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Islanders once again doing battle in the playoffs. That's going to be an easy season, a series for the Carolina Hurricanes, in my opinion. But the Islanders are very pesky, right? Then, of course, original six matchup between the Bruins and the Leafs, and probably one of the best rivals, if not the best rivalry right now, the Panthers and the Lightning. And the Lightning have been on fire of late too. So that's why I would say it's been such a great season, a great regular season for all the casual fans out there. I would highly suggest tune into the playoffs because you know that the NHL playoffs are unlike any other. But that was my little spiel for that. Do you ever want to respond to that?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that my biggest takeaway is exactly what you said. How much more fun
Mhm,
the NHL regular season was compared to the NBA regular
mhm.
season. That's my caution warning to the NHL. Do not expand the playoff. You do not need load management creeping your way into the sport.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, in the NBA, man, 10 teams from each conference is a little rich. Like
Mhm.
that is to me, that's just at this point, what are we doing playing 82 games? It really doesn't make all that much sense. It gets very boring. Even in the NHL, it's tough to find the stakes or the reasons to watch a game in the middle of February or
Right.
late January. But you have the product like it is right now, which I think is, to your point, as good, if not better than anything we've seen, you
Mhm.
hold on to this because you do not want teams to be more incentivized. Okay, he's got a week long injury. Let's keep him out 2 weeks, two and a
Mhm.
half weeks, just to make sure he's okay. Worst case scenario, we play in the play in or whatever. To me,
Mm.
I just don't think the NHL should tinker with what it has right now because the product is so strong. And the NBA, let's be honest, it's a watered down product.
It
It's a
is.
watered down
It is,
product
most definitely.
most nights. So the NHL would be wise to take that as a cautionary tale rather than a tale of something that they should dip their toes into.
Absolutely. Look, it was crazy because some of the dialogue on TV the last couple of days was, should the Lakers tank this game against New Orleans last night so they can avoid
Yeah.
Denver? Now, we get that sometimes in the NHL. People talk about that, but it's not as open. And the other thing, too, is the biggest thing to me about the NBA and the NHL right now is the NHL superstars play every single night. When you go to a game, whether it's in Toronto, Winnipeg, Vancouver, Edmonton, Columbus, wherever, chances are, if a superstar is healthy, they are going to play. It's not like the NBA where guys take a Friday night game off, a Saturday night game off, a nationally televised game off. That's what this gets fans disinterested in the sport. If the best players aren't playing, that is not a good sign at all. Now, I know you
No,
want.
no, and that's how you anger these big TV
Mhm.
companies that are giving you, your bread and butter. These
Yeah.
these big multi-$100 million deals, sometimes billion-dollar deals
Mhm.
with these companies. You start taking them off when Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James both
Mhm.
decide to sit out a Lakers Bucks matchup. Now, who's going to watch that? You know what
Nobody.
I'm saying? Like the
Exactly.
NHL, the Leafs, for example, last night had every reason they could bench everyone, really. Like understand Matthews is going for
Mhm.
70, but there was no reason to play Marner, who's coming back from injury, Tavares, Nylander. They could have rested everyone. The points don't mean much to the team at this stake of the season. Still, they play everybody, and
Mhm.
it's an entertaining watch. And
Yeah.
and you're not going to have these goal races like the Matthews one to 70 if he starts missing more time because hey, why put him through the rigors of a tough season? I don't mind it for veteran players. Sometimes you see teams do this. Remember Boston did this with Patrice Bergeron. If he was hurt or banged up, they'd give him a couple extra nights off. Okay, that's fine. That's a veteran rest. But when you've
Mhm.
got players in their prime sitting nights out for no reason at all, really, it's frustrating as a fan, and
Mhm.
it's gonna stunt your growth when it comes to growing the
Absolutely.
game.
Now, you mentioned the Leafs last night. They let four unanswered goals in against Florida. They come back. Florida claims the Atlantic Division. Um, Now the Leafs will play Boston, and according to NorthStar Bets right now, the Leafs are a slight underdog at plus 166. The Bruins are favored at minus 143. Before we dive into this matchup, Stevie, I want to talk about perception with the Leafs. So last night, I'm of course, at the Jays game, and I see on Twitter Matthew Kachuk dummying John Tavares by the bench, and there's no pushback from John Tavares whatsoever. He takes it as per usual. He doesn't give anything back. He doesn't dish it out. Some other Leafs join in, but John Tavares is the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? And they're going to go to Boston, and Brad Marchand is going to try to get under everybody's skin. That's going to be a ploy. And I get it, Domi Bertuzzi get into it and stuff like that. But to have your captain consistently get in these scrums and not push back or fight back at all, and to have Matthew Kachuk basically, for excuse my French here, like shit on your captain in front of everybody, that is a bad perception, and it sends a bad message once again to the rest of the league and the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference that, hey, we're the Toronto Maple Leafs, and our captain, again, doesn't do anything whatsoever. Do you agree with me on that perception there, Stevie?
Well, I've been saying this all year. Tough
Mhm.
teams aren't just a couple of tough guys. It's you've got to buy in from top to bottom. And you look at that Florida Panthers team, and they're the best example of that
Yeah.
in the Eastern Conference. You've got players like Matt Kachuk, Sam Bennett, guys who are willing to go to war every single night, whether it's push and shove or
Mhm.
fight. They are willing to do battle. The Leafs, they don't have that. We've seen Austin Matthews be the first guy out of a scrum. We've seen John Tavares, like you said, not push back. Mitch Marner's not going to do anything. William Nylander's not that guy. And I'm not advocating for these guys to fight. You don't need these guys to go out there and break their hands off of some guy's helmet. That's not what I'm saying. But give a shove back. Don't not necessarily cross check the guy in the head, but push him back and let him know.
Mhm.
Grab the jersey and just give him just a couple of jabs. Like you don't need to drop the mitts, but at least have some pushback. Be tough to play against. And that's
Mhm.
where I still have difficulty buying into this Maple Leafs team. I don't see them being a tough team to play against.
No.
Boston, Boston has the recipe. Boston has the formula
Mhm.
to stop this Maple Leafs team. And all Boston does is it's just a buy-in from top to bottom. Everybody makes
Yeah.
it difficult for Toronto's top stars, and the Leafs don't have much else to go off of. So that's where I see Boston having the edge. Not that they have more skill, but just
Mhm.
they're more willing to buy in and do what they need to win this series.
Yeah, no, look, nobody's talking about the Leafs' big players jumping into a fight, but as the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, a guy who's quite frankly one of the gonna go down as a guy who's got a whole lot of stats, a whole lot of accolades, well, not a whole lot of individual accolades, but he puts up a whole lot of points for a whole lot of nothing, right? What has John Tavares really done in his career to have again? Optics are a big thing in sports. You look at last night in Vancouver, and again, Canucks bias here a bit, but in a mean nothing game against the Calgary Flames, well, they clinched the Pacific Division, but that was kind of a foregone conclusion. Quinn Hughes is in a scrum with the Calgary Flames. This is the guy who's what doing the Norris Trophy, has put up over 90 points this season. He's one of the smallest guys on the ice, but he's in there with his teammates. That optically shows so much better than a guy than John Tavares, who's getting pummeled on by Matthew Tkachuk once again, like last year, and doesn't respond whatsoever. And when I look at this going forward into the Bruins series, that's exactly what the Bruins are going to do. They know that they're in the Leafs' head. The Bruins know that Toronto hasn't beat them in a series since like I think the 40s or the 50s or whatever,
Yeah.
right? They know that they have home ice advantage. And when we look at the roster for roster, top end skill, we'll give it to the Leafs, right? Defense, the Bruins have. Goaltending, the Bruins have. Coaching, we'll see, but I think the Bruins, I like
I think the Bruins got it too.
Jim
Yeah,
Montgomery a
I
lot.
respect
But
coaching
here's
too.
the biggest thing for me, Stevie, and this is what you'll like to hear this. Because of last year, what happened to the Boston Bruins, the fact that they got embarrassed pretty much in the first round, the best regular season of all time, lose in 7 games on your home ice to the Florida Panthers. There is going to be such a bad taste in the Bruins' mouth from last year. You are going to be game one. The Leafs are going to be waking up to a sleeping bear, right? The Bruins are going to be out, ready for blood, ready for war, because you look what happened to Tampa Bay, right? The year after they got embarrassed to against
It was
Columbus in the
the
first round.
Columbus that year,
The
yeah.
Panthers, the year before they went to the finals, they were the President's Trophy winners. They didn't go on a deep run that year. The Bruins last year, look, I'm not saying the Bruins didn't go to the finals, but what I'm saying is they're going to win the first round. It's it, they have such a bad taste in their mouth from last year that the Leafs. That's the one thing that I'm very scared about.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Tampa Bay was the one team I really wanted Boston to avoid
Mm,
at all costs. Tampa Bay has had Boston's number
yeah,
more so than even Florida, I would say. This goes
yeah.
back plenty of years. The Lightning have been able to out physical the Boston Bruins
Mhm.
in the regular season, in the playoffs. They match up very well against Boston. That
Yeah.
was not the series I wanted. I'm not saying the Bruins purposefully put themselves in this spot, but I'm going to say they're better off for having to play the Maple Leafs than the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
That's not to say that maybe the Lightning get bounced early by Florida. Who knows what happens in that series? They could come out and not look very good against Florida. But I'm saying in that
Mhm.
matchup in particular, when I look historically, Tampa Bay versus Boston or Toronto versus Boston has been a much friendlier and kinder matchup. And it goes to what we've talked about. It's just
Mhm.
Boston is not the toughest team, but they're willing to be a difficult team to play against, and
Right.
they can make life miserable for Toronto's top stars. It's really not a difficult formula. Matthews, you want the perimeter, you can have it. You want to take
Mhm.
shots from the sideboards, from the corners, it's all yours. But if you want to come to the front of the net, there's a price to pay. And these Maple Leaf stars have not proven that they're willing to pay that price in the postseason. So until they do, until we see it, we can't buy into it. And goaltending, this is as better of other than the Jets and the Avalanche. This is probably the biggest goaltending mismatch
Mhm.
in the first round. Toronto, you're bouncing between a rookie who hasn't looked good since coming back from injury,
Yeah.
and a guy who was sent to the minors earlier this year, looking like he should be back with the Marlies. So it's not good. It's not pretty for Toronto between the pipes. And Boston, a lot of questions. Sure, both teams have questions in that. One is we have our two starters are so great, we don't know which one we should roll with. Maybe we'll put both out there. The other
Yeah.
one's like, God, is Martin Jones the third option? Is there another box, goalie
Yeah.
hiding behind a box we can open up and maybe bring him in? It's a mess right now for Toronto between the pipes.
Yeah, no, look, Jeremy Swayman was 3-0 against Toronto this season, had a 1.3 goals against average. I think the only game Omar played, he had 37 saves in that overtime win. The Bruins swept the Leafs this year. Look, I know we're kind of dumping on the Leafs a whole lot here. Look, I think they'll make this, it'll be a competitive series for sure. The Bruins are not going to sweep Toronto. Toronto is too talented to get swept. But like you mentioned, what comes down to it is this: can Samsonov or Wall help steal a game in Boston? Because the Leafs are going to have to win a game in Boston this series to advance, right? One way or another. I don't know if they can. I don't know if you can have a guy like, for as battle tested as Joel Edmondson is, for as a revelation as Simone Benoit has been, can that defense hold up in a hostile environment like Boston? Because the playoffs are different. You're not playing Arizona. You're not playing San Jose. You're not playing Detroit. You're not playing Pittsburgh. You're playing the Boston Bruins in Boston and last change, right? That's a big factor. When I
For
have no
sure.
question that that Matthews will get his. I'm sure Nylander gets their points, but can the other guys? Can a Tavares show up? Can a Marner show up? Can a Yarncrow? Can they get scoring from a Domi, a Bertuzzi, a McMahon? I don't know about that. That's the thing. I don't know.
I have questions about the big guys too, because we
Yeah,
saw these teams played back to back in the same week this year,
and they're
and
no show.
Matthews no showed both games. They
Yeah.
scored one goal in each contest, lost both
Mhm.
games by the same score, 4-1. So I have questions about whether Matthews can get the job done against Boston, uh,
Mhm.
and rightfully so. I'm not saying regular season. If he scores 70 tonight, give him the Hart Trophy. He's the
Yeah.
MVP. But in the playoffs, those numbers, you can't argue the numbers. They take a dive. Same with
Yeah.
Mitch Marner, who has looked so since coming back from injury. Nylander, we've got some good family friends who are Leaf fans. When this guy's not going, it's not Nylander, it's Nolander. And there's been a whole lot of Nolander as of late. So there's definitely some reason to be worried about the Maple Leafs in this series. I, to be honest with you, it's kind of weird because I'm sure Leaf fans probably feel a little bit better not playing Florida. There was no good option, but this is the thing with the Maple Leafs, and they're usually the ones complaining about the playoff format. It doesn't matter. You're gonna have to beat a good team at some point.
Yep.
Whether it's now, whether it's in the Eastern Conference Final, you're gonna have to play a good team at some point. I don't think Toronto's up to the task though. They finished third in the division for a reason. I'd put them as about the fourth best team in the division entering the playoffs. I'd take the Lightning over them too.
Yeah.
I don't see this going well for Toronto. I'll take the Bruins to win this series in 5 games.
5 games. Wow.
5 games.
5
I don't
games.
see it. I don't see it being much of a series, to be honest with you.
Jeez.
I've got Boston winning. I just think that they can overwhelm Toronto. The Leafs. The issue is, I can already see what's going to happen. They're going to go away from their game in this series. They're going to try to be physical.
Yeah.
They're going to try to be something they're not. And you can add the Max Domis, you can add the Bertuzzis,
Yeah.
you can add the Reeves. If those are the guys that we're talking about the most in this series, Toronto has already lost. It
No.
doesn't matter. If we're not
That's
talking about Matthews, if we're not talking about Marner, if we're not talking about Nylander, if we're talking about Domi, Bertuzzi, Reeves as the
mhm.
most meaningful contributions on the Maple Leafs, that series is not lasting long.
No, you're absolutely right. That's actually a good point you bring up. As I'm thinking about it right now, is the Leafs are gonna try to be and change that perception that we're tough, we can battle, we're battle tested, and they're gonna get off their game. And we know this is the case too, Stevie. The refs gonna put the whistles away a little bit, right? They're gonna let them go a little bit, and the Leafs aren't gonna get as many power. Well, their fans complain that they never get power play opportunities anyway. But the Leafs penalty kill stinks, right? It's not very. It's improved a bit over the last little while, but in totality, it's not the best. The Bruins, their power play is not, it's in the upper half of the league, but it's not one of the best. So the Bruins can take advantage of that. I think David Pastrnak can have a field day. He loves playing against the Leafs. He loves giving it to Leaf fans. He has that bite to them. But that's a very interesting point. I think the Leafs might start swaying to get off their game to prove to everybody that they're a tough team when we all know they're not. And that could be a very interesting factor in the series, Stevie. I do believe so.
Yeah, like I said, it's still not the identity of the team because the
Mhm.
top guys don't play that way. Your identity is you need Matthews to put up unprecedented goal scoring seasons
Right.
to win games, and that's what it is, and that's the recipe for success. Let's not
Mhm.
say the Leafs are a tougher team. They tried that against Boston. Remember the second time they played,
In
McCabe goes
Boston?
out there, cross checks two guys in the face. You put Boston on the power play, they score immediately. Like
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying. You want to play. They don't know how to play that game. The
Mhm.
Floridas, uh, they're a physical team, but they don't take a lot of stupid penalties.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
they draw a lot of penalties. They
Mhm.
use the retaliation in their favor. They're aggressive, but they don't cross that line. The Leafs, the only way they know how to be aggressive is they cross the line. Like when Domi went after Marchand in that game
Mhm.
later in the third period from the season. Okay, Marchand, that's not his spot to fight. That collision with Nyes, was it accidentally on purpose? Yeah, but why does Marchand have to answer the bell against Domi? They're in different leagues, those guys.
Yeah.
Max Domi having a nice year. Brad Marchand's a future Hall of Famer. Those guys are in different leagues. He does
Oh.
not have to fight. He does not have to fight Max Domi. So this is what I'm saying. And Domi takes a stupid penalty because of it. So this is
No.
what I'm saying. The Leafs, you know what? They can try to play that game, but their top guys aren't going to play that game. We saw it last night with
Yeah.
John Tavares. We've seen it countless times with Austin Matthews, Mitch
Yeah.
Marner, William Nylander. You don't have to sell me on something that's not going to come to
Yeah.
fruition. So
No, I
I'll
agree
take
one
in
I
five.
I agree 1000%. When I look at it, I think I'm gonna take Boston. It's not an official prediction yet. I'm gonna wait, but I think Boston wins in 6 games. Because I think Swayman can steal a game in Toronto. Right? It's as simple as that. I think Swayman has shown that he can shut this team out. When the games get tighter, the Leafs get tighter. They can't score. And this that defense, I don't like this defense core at all. Morgan Riley's having his worst season defensively I've ever seen. I don't know why he doesn't get more heat about this because he's been horrible. For a guy who's supposed to be a number one defenseman who's getting over 7 million bucks, he is horrible out there. TJ Brody's been unplayable a bunch of times. Jake McCabe's been their best defenseman this year. And that's saying a whole lot if Jake McCabe is your best defenseman. So I think for that reason, offense isn't going to carry you in a series like this, right? Matthews could score 10 goals and they could still lose in 5 games. I could see that, right? I could see Matthews scoring 10 goals this series and they still lose, right? So that's why I think the Bruins win this because they're better than the Leafs where it matters the most in the trenches, in net, and on the back end. So that to me is why the Bruins will win in 6 games. But let's talk about the other series on NorthStar Bets as well. All the odds for the Eastern Conference are out there, and the Winnipeg Jets and Colorado Avalanche. So, Stevie, what are some of the best bets you have right now?
I'm scouring for upsets. We've seen the
Ooh,
NHL playoffs time and time again be unpredictable. And one upset I'm going to start with, you're actually getting the higher seed. You're getting the team with home ice advantage at
yeah,
plus money odds. And that is the Winnipeg Jets at plus
uh-huh.
116 against the Colorado Avalanche. We've seen very similar domination from Winnipeg over Colorado as we've seen with Boston over Toronto this year. Winnipeg
Yeah,
swept the season series 3-0. We just saw them beat the Avs 7-0. And I keep coming back to this. This is the largest goaltending mismatch of the first round of any series.
right.
This is bigger than Shesterkin versus Lindgren. This is a huge mismatch with Hellebuck over a Noonan and Georgiev. It
Mhm.
doesn't get bigger than that. Give me the team with the better goalie and home ice advantage in the Winnipeg Jets. And I also like the Tampa Bay Lightning at plus 150 over the Florida Panthers. I also think Florida, be careful what you wish for. They would have been better off playing the Leafs. I don't think you want the Lightning right now. I've been saying this. They've been heating up. They're hot. They've
Yeah,
lost the last 3 games. That doesn't matter. They've been locked into the top wild card spot in a long time. They're too far ahead of that last wild card spot, too far behind the Leafs. But Vasilevsky, we've seen him return to form as he's come back from this back surgery that he had in the offseason. That is a scary proposition. Dumba declared great additions at
Mhm.
the deadline. They will beat the Florida Panthers in the first round. I'm betting on it at plus 150.
Hey, look, I'm fully behind you on the Tampa train right now. They're playing their best hockey when it matters the most. Florida, while they did win the division, hasn't been as good as they hasn't been as good in the second half of the season. And like you mentioned, Andre Vasilevsky is back. And this could be the final run for Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay. So give me the Lightning to win that. I like what you say with the Jets, but I'm still going to go with the Avs on that one, Stevie. But only a few more sleeps away. We'll talk next week and talk about the playoff action that's underway and the series that will be getting going. Stevie, take care, my friend.
Yeah, you too. I can't wait to talk about what Brad Marchand antic from Saturday night next week with you. I know there's going to be at least one, so I can't wait to dive into that next week.